Hi everybody, FIDE Master Dennis Monokroussos here, and today I decided that I didn't feel like doing another quick Rui show just yet, so the Open Ruy Lopez will have to wait, probably maybe next week, maybe the week after that, we'll see. But I thought I'd do something a bit different, and what I came up with was looking at some endgames by Akiba Rubinstein. Now Rubinstein, for those of you who are unfamiliar with him, was one of the best players in the world in the early 20th century. Very, very strong player. He was never given a chance to go for the World Championship. So back then, there was no qualifying cycle or anything like that. Basically, you had to raise the money and hope that the World Champion would give you a shot. And in part because Lasker was kind of ducking him for a while, and in part because World War I essentially messed everything up, he didn't get his title chance. But still, there was a period, again, in the early 20th century where he was probably the best player in the world. It's a very interesting player, I think, still for us today. Not just because he was great in general, but for a number of reasons. So one is that, in terms of the openings, he was really a surprisingly modern player. The systems that he devised, which include, for example, the Moran is his invention. What's interesting about these systems is that they're not just attempts to develop the pieces in some kind of logical way. They're not really attempts to go for some kind of crushing attack from move one, but rather they're systems where there's kind of an integral link between the opening, the middle game, and sometimes even to the end game. And that, I think, is again kind of a fundamentally modern approach to the opening, where it's tied in to these long-term aims. Botvinnik is perhaps the great exponent of that before contemporary chess. I mean, Botvinnik is in a way kind of the inventor of contemporary chess and contemporary chess preparation. But really, Rubinstein is a forerunner to this, an important forerunner. So that's one reason why Rubinstein, I think, is still interesting to us today. His openings are surprisingly modern, and his approach to the openings is as well. Secondly, he was a fantastic endgame player. I mean, one of the all-time greats in the endgame, certainly one of the best endgame players of his day. And I think his endgames really hold up even to the present, especially rook endings, but also, I mean, I would say just in general in that phase of the game. So we're going to take a look at 3 king and pawn endings that he won in his practice. In all 3 of these games he had black. And the first one is against Eric Cohn, played in St. Petersburg in 1909, which I believe he tied for first with Emanuel Lasker in that tournament and defeated him in their individual game. Anyway, we can start looking at this game from this position here. Rubinstein had black and played knight to c4 check. Alright, Cohn rightly took on c4, and after rook takes c4 made an understandable but mistaken decision. He probably should have played something like rook to g1, and maybe after g6, I think he can just play rook to g4 then, and that'll stop any ideas of rook to h4, and then he should be able to draw without too much difficulty. I mean, black is marginally better, but nothing really serious. But Cohn played rook to c1, and this is a big mistake. All right, Rubinstein exchanged, and all right, so Cohn figures that he's got a small problem on the king side, but nothing really serious. It's easy enough to defend all the pawns there. There's no real imbalance in the pawn structure, at least none in the sense that black can force the creation of a passed pawn. So Cohn thought, all right, I should be able to hold this. I mean, I'll be a little bit passive maybe, but it shouldn't be too tough. But he was mistaken. All right, so your challenge here is to figure out black's winning plan. Now, I think many of you may have seen this ending before, especially those of you who are, I don't want to say old. I wouldn't call myself old, but those of you who, let's say, date back to the book era, a pre-internet era, will probably have seen this before. But those of you who have kind of grown up as chess players primarily through the internet may not be familiar with this endgame. So, but for all of you, try to figure out a winning plan for black. Okay, so I'm going to assume you've done it, and let's go ahead and see what Rubinstein did. So he played king f6, and he heads over to the h-pawn. It's not that he's going to win it, but rather the extra space he gains is going to prove decisive. And that's a very important concept in king and pawn endings. Often you can have a position where everything is just about equal as far as the pawn structure goes. The pawns are relatively symmetrical. There's no possibility of an outside pass pawn, for example. But one side has a slightly more active king. And very often that can prove decisive. I mean, it's a really important factor. All right, in the game, Kohn played king to e2, but we should see what happens if he goes for a counterattack, just to kind of count things out here. So king h4, king d4, king h3, king c5, takes, king d6, king g2, king c7, and black could play b5, and this would perhaps win in a more straightforward way. But h5 works as well, and it's just little simple tactics here. So both sides push, and now black to move and just win in a very convincing way. So how does black eliminate all white resistance? Queen a1. So this gets rid of all the pawns on the queen side, after which the king side is, of course, going to settle the issue in black's favor. Okay, so king d3 and going for this counterattack is just hopelessly slow. All right, so white is forced to go into the corner to defend. All right, now if this wasn't part of what you would come up with when I suggested that you look for a plan for black, try again from here. So how should black proceed at this point to build his advantage? Well, what black wants to do here are a couple of things. Very important. There's a very important endgame principle that's usually expressed as just do not hurry. And the idea with do not hurry is twofold. So one idea is not really relevant here. One part of it is that very often if you just kind of sit on the position, your opponent will do the work for you by screwing up in some way or other. They'll go astray and make your job easier. The second aspect of it is that when you've got a position where your opponent has really almost nothing that he can do to improve his pieces, he's just kind of stuck there. What you should do before taking decisive action is to improve your position as much as possible. And so here that would mean, from black's point of view, grabbing a bunch of space. And that's what Rubinstein does. So he plays e5. And now we can look at 3 tries for white. So white in the game just played king h1, g1, h1, g1 for a while and waited to see what Rubinstein would do. We can look at 2 other ideas. So one is to play e4. And this, since Rubinstein soon plays f5. The problem with this is that now black can simply bring his king around to f4 and then make a waiting move and win by zugzwang. So b5. Okay, so we take away all of white's tempo moves over on the queen side. King h1, and now h5. And the idea of this is that we will have h4 to kick the white king back from g3. King g1, king h4, king g2, king g5, king g3, h4. Okay, and now white can try another waiting move. He can play king h3. And, well, frankly, king f4 is just fine here, but we can also just wait. No reason to even give him the pawn. So f6, king g2, king f4, and, all right, if king h3, then you could just take everything. You could play king f3, or you could play g5, and on king g2, play a6, and run him out of moves. Or, if white plays h3, just a6, and he's in zugzwang, and black is winning at least 2 pawns here for starters. So e4 is not really a great idea. It gives black a very simple winning approach. A second move that's worth considering is a4. And this is not fundamentally different from king h1, but in general it's better to have your pawns pushed as far as possible in case there's a race. Either way, it buys you time. Alright, so let's say b6, a5, takes, a6, and now play will proceed more or less like the game. So king h1, g5, or f5, doesn't really matter. King g1, h5, king h1, f5, king g1, g4, takes, f takes g4, e4, and now this is the basic winning idea. You play h4 and g3 and wins. So if fg, king g3, and black wins by taking on e3 because he'll have the opposition. So if this is unfamiliar to you, it's important to know that when you've got this kind of setup, black wins no matter whose move it is. Obviously, if it's white's move, it's very easy. But if it's black's move here, when the king is on the 6th rank, it's an automatic win. So king d3, king d1, e3, king e1, e2. And there you go. All right. If instead of f takes g3, white tries king to g1, then g2 settles the issue. And yeah, white has to give up the pawn, And okay, if king f2, king h2 obviously wins, and if e4, then the game is even faster. King g3 and f2 mate. Alrighty, so that's the basic idea. In the game, Cohn played king h1, and Rubinstein simply said thank you very much for the extra space, or the extra tempo moves, b5, king g1, f5, g5, h5. Okay, but no a5. a5 is not coming, but he's gotten all the pawns he can safely as far as they can go. And now, g4. Alright, we've already seen basically what happens after f takes g4. So fg, fg. Okay, if e4 here, same idea, h4. Now, the one thing that can be said about this is that if there were no queenside pawns, this would be a draw, because here when black takes on e4, white plays king e2, he will have the opposition when it counts, but with the queenside pawns, and also with that black tempo move with the a pawn, it's a win. Now white can try f4 though, and at least make it seem interesting. But now ef, e5, f3, e6, and now black has a pleasant choice. He could play g2, or can just do it this way, and then of course black will be able to round up the white e pawn. Alright, so e4 is interesting, but not going to save the game. So king g1, e4, and now we make sure that we have the winning endgame that we already saw. King h1, h4, and black wins. In fact, here he even gets the opposition, not that he needs it. Alright, so in the game, Cohn played e4, and it's simple from here. Takes, h4, and here, after h takes g3, Cohn resigned. Again, if fg, king g3, white wins the e4 pawn, and can either promote it, thanks to the spare tempo he's got with the a pawn. Well, actually, he doesn't even need that either. Anyway, that's just obvious, and again, f4 fails this way. We already saw the f2 approach. Okay, the g2 approach is this. Okay, so if king f2, king h2, and again, white queens in time, or if e7, king g3, and f2 is mate. Alright, so that was one pretty interesting pawn ending, a real famous one. And it's easy to kind of underestimate this. I mean, it looks like white should be okay, but it's giving up too much penetration to black's king, giving up too much space, proves fatal. Okay, the next one is from a game against Alfred Brinkmann, I guess, played in 1929 in Budapest. Alright, so this game we'll start looking at from here. Okay, so we've got this ending, and it starts at this point. Okay, king f2, king e4, king e2, g5. Alright, so black has, again, more space, but it doesn't look like it should be that big of a deal. Again, the pawn structure looks almost symmetrical. It's nearly symmetrical. And it also would appear that white can basically seal up all the entrances. Now, at this point, for instance, it looks like g3 might draw the game immediately, because the black king can't go to d4, can't go to f4. And if black plays something like g4, white just plays king to f2, and there's no place for white to break in, or sorry, for black to break in. So it looks like a draw, but it's not quite. Again, though, I would suggest spending some time trying to analyze this position on your own, figure out if black can win or not, and if so, how he can win. Okay, well, what Rubinstein could have played here, white didn't play g3, he played king to f2, but on g3, then d4. Okay, and now if white tries king to d2, then we take and follow up with king f3. And in the race here, white is just too slow. So you can see that black is going to queen far too early. Alright, so king to d2 is no good. But c takes d4 is obvious and seems like it should be good. And here, white has three tries. There's king f3, going for counterplay on the king side. There's c3 check, and there's king to d2. Let's look at all of these. So on c3 check, king e4, king f2. If king d2, of course, then king f3 wins. If g4, king f4 wins. So king f2, king d3, king f3, king c2, king g4, king b2, king g5, king c3, g4, b4 takes, and now, okay, a3 is perhaps the fastest, but king b4 is very simple and fine. black queen's first and can either win the queen versus pawn ending with ease, or just trade off the queen for the pawn and promote the second passer. Alright, so c3 check does not save the game. Okay, let's look at king to f3. So on king f3, going for it right away, then c3. Takes, king g4, king c2, king g5, and again, b4, and black wins the race pretty easily. Alright, so finally, back here, how about king to d2? This looks pretty sensible. Well, king e4, heading back over to the king side. Now, if white tries to counterattack this way, again he's too slow. And this is one of the advantages. Remember I said in the last example, you want to push your pawns in these positions most of the time as far as you can before taking decisive action. Now this only applies when your opponent really has no counterplay. But the reason you do it is so that way you win all the races. So we saw if white goes for counterplay on the king side, black is too fast on the queen side. Here, white's going for counterplay on the queen side, but black will be too fast on the king side. King f3, takes, and again, black is queening with a couple of tempi to spare. So after king to e4, white needs to shadow the black king. So king e2, and now if, for instance, black plays g4, then after c3 it's just a dead draw. So white's got the opposition, and black can't break through. Well, is this a draw? The answer is that it's not, because black has the nice shot b4. The basic point being that on a takes b4, c3 is a winner. bc, a3, and the pawn promotes. Now white could stop the threat of c3 by playing c3 himself, but then black just trades pawns and plays g4, and white is in a fatal zugzwang. This is one of the reasons, this kind of situation is one of the reasons why having more space with your king is really important. Having the further advanced king is better. Okay, last try for white is king to d2, but now c3 check. Okay, again if bc we play ba, king c1, king d5, king b1, king c4, king a2, and we just wipe out all the pawns, and then the black king comes over and he'll win the pawn and promote the g pawn. Okay, instead of b takes c3 then, finally there's king to d1, b takes a3, but now if ba then king f3 is an easy win, or if bc again king to d5 is winning. Alrighty, so that is that it? Oh no, there's one other try. Okay, so back here. So we just tried g3, that didn't quite work. Another try is king to d2. King f4, king e2, king g3, king f1, but now king h2 is winning. King f2, g4, and white will be placed in zugzwang momentarily, either after g3, king h3, or king f1, and then the pawn coming to g3. So those attempts to save the game did not succeed. Brinkmann tried king to f2. And now what? Now what does Rubinstein play? d4. Looks a little funny, but it works. Okay, the threat here is to play d3. d3, if it's black's move, wins. And so c takes d4, king e2. But now what? c3 here? Well, if c3 here, then I think b4 might be able to hold for white. So the right move here is b4. Again, kind of a startling move, but it does the job. So if a takes b4, c3, b takes c3, and now not king takes c3. This would of course be a catastrophically bad move, because after b5 both players queen simultaneously, but rather after b takes c3, king to c4. This is the right move. Okay, now king to d2, a3, king c1, and again for a moment it looks like white is okay. His king is there just in the nick of time. But now black plays king takes c3, and the point is that on b5, a2, and it's queening and it's even mating. So after king c3, white has to play king to b1, but now king takes b4, and white wins with the outside passed pawn. By the way, if these were h pawns instead of g pawns, white's move, I think h4 would draw the game. That would be a draw, because the white king could make it back to f2 in time. But here, that's just completely irrelevant, and black wins with trivial ease. So, for instance, g4, king c3, king a2, takes. And the problem is that, of course, white cannot play king to g2 here. If he could play king g2, he would draw, but he can't, so it's over. And g3, g2, g1. Alright, so a takes b4 is at least a good try because of this little trick. So black has to find king c4. As long as he does that, though, he's winning. Alright, so yeah, b4 is a very nice move. Okay, white played king to d2 instead, but now b3. And the point is that now white will have to give up access to the d3 square. So c3 check, king e4, king e2, king f4, king f2. And yeah, okay, if white had played, no, sorry, this is forced. Okay, yeah, king f2, king g4. And white has to give ground. King f1, king g3, king g1, g4. So actually, yeah, sorry about that. The d3 square is not relevant in this variation. Some variations it was, but not here. Anyway, at this point, it's a simple win. White played king f1, king h2, king f2, and of course not g3. This would be a horrible move, and it's only because black's pawns on the queen side are so far advanced that it doesn't lose. King f3, king g1, and black's king can actually make a draw over here. And just to give one funny variation, b1 queen, and stalemate. Okay, but of course, king h1 is right. Yeah, if king f1, then g3 is Zugzwang, so that takes care of that. And after king g3, king g1 is also Zugzwang. Although, if it were black to move, he could win by bringing his king over to f1 and then to the queen side. But white has to still play something he doesn't want to do. And at this point, Brinkmann resigned. Of course, the black king just runs over to the b pawn, and there's no contest in the race between black's b pawn and white's pawn on c3. Okay, so another very nice ending. Alright, the next one is a little bit different. This was against Kosta Rosic, against, well, of course against Rubinstein again. Played in Rogaška Slatina in 1929. And we can take up the action from here. Rubinstein played rook to c5, takes, knight b3, takes, and takes. Now, this one, I think, is still a draw at this point. I think. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that white can still hold this. But it's not easy, and he didn't succeed. King f7, king d3, king e6, king c3, king d5, f3, e4, f4. And, alright, at this point, Rubinstein finds a very, very interesting idea. And it doesn't win, but it put pressure on his opponent, and he pulled a win out of it. Now, a move that could be considered as b4 check, just to drive the white king back so there's no chance of his penetrating on the queen side. But I can't find a win here. So king d2, for instance, h5 to prevent g4, king e2, king e6. Well, okay, there are two plans. Black can bring his king to the king side or try to penetrate over on the queen side. But I don't think either works. For instance, king c5, king d2, king b5, f5, and alright, if a4, then just takes, and king c2. There's no problem over there. But now if the king comes back over, king c5, g3, king d5, h3, king e5, g4. And I don't see how black can win this, so I think white's fine here. Another try back here, instead of king to b5, is to play g6, not allowing f5. But again, I think white's okay. h4, and this has a kind of a funny idea. So now on king to b5, g4, because if h takes g4, which is a blunder, white plays f5, and now he wins. So f5 is probably best, but now, okay, there's no breakthrough. a4 or g5, a4 takes, king c2, and after king a5 or king b5, doesn't matter, b3. And now it's not just difficult for black to win, it's impossible. It's illegal. There's no way to win unless you cheat and your opponent misses it. So this is obviously a dead draw. Alright, So back to here, okay, where you saw that king b5 doesn't work. Okay, if king e6, trying to break through over on the king side, then king f2, king f5, king g3, g5, for example, takes, h4. And it's just nothing doing here. Actually, let me think. Okay, yeah, no, gh would be horrible, because after gh, king h4, king g6, g4, and then white wins. So you've got to play g4, but white just plays king f2, king g3 forever, and black has no way to win, or even make progress. I mean, he's got to just prevent white from playing king f4 himself. So this is just a dead draw. Okay, so b4 check, makes some sense, but it doesn't seem to be a winner. All right, so Rubinstein kept the queen side unresolved and played g5. All right, Rosic took, and here I think we have a key moment. So I think white draws here, but I think he only has one way to draw. So you might want to take a look at this position. I think it's a very interesting and even kind of surprising position, really. All right, well, the right move here was b4, and I think this holds the draw. All right, let's take a look at some possibilities. If AB, king b4, f5, king b5 is of course impossible because f4 wins, and if white plays something like h3, aiming to play g3 and h4 and make a passed pawn of his own, then white loses to f4, takes, and now key move, king d4. And not only can the white king not get back to stop the e-pawn, the worst news is that although he can play f takes g5, and the pawns seem to be in a tie, black queens with check, and that wins the game. So h3 is a blunder, but king to c3 is okay. And now, all right, here if b4 check, funny enough, this one doesn't win. King b4, f4, ef, king d4 would be the same thing, but white can play king c3, f3, takes, here. And in fact, it's kind of remarkable that black can still save this position, but he can't. So for instance, b4, king c6, e4, king b5, and he's just in time here to hold everything together. And if e4 check, king c5, king e3, king c4, h4, takes, and then king to d4, and all the pawns are going to end up off the board. So back here, okay, instead of b4 check, black can play the immediate f4, but just takes, and there's no way for black to win this. This is a draw. All right, back to b4. If a4 instead, now h3, with the idea of g3, h4, and using the outside passed pawn. King e5, g3, king d5, and now h4. King e5, h5, f5, h6, king f6, king d4. And you can see, I mean, white's king is really active, and black is not winning this. In fact, it's again fortunate that black can still draw in this position, but he can. So both sides promote, and obviously white can take on b5, but black should hold this without too much trouble. For instance, queen to d1 check, and then queen to b3 ought to save the game. Okay, so b4 I think draws, but Rosic played g4, which looks pretty logical too. I mean, how in the world is black going to win this game? I mean, if he goes over to the king side, if he plays like king e5 and f5, well then that allows the white king to break through. On the other hand, if he plays b4 check at some moment, if black plays b4 check, then the white king can just run back to the king side, and there's no room on the queen side for a breakthrough. So it looks like this should be just a dead draw, but in fact it's not. And again, you might want to try to work this out. How does black win? How does black win in this ending? What's the secret to it? All right, well, the first move is the obvious move. Okay, king to e5. Now, if king to d2, black wins with f5. This is easy. Okay, and let's look at two possibilities. If gf, king f5, okay, black wants to play king to g4. If white tries h3, then g4 is winning. Takes. Okay, if he goes to e2, he gets squeezed out very, very easily, like this. And if he tries to counterattack, he loses in the so-called trebuchet position. It's white to move, and he's got to give up the e3 pawn, and he loses the game. Okay, so h3 doesn't succeed. All right, king e2, king g4, king f2, king h3, king g1, and here we have Rubinstein all over again. b4, again, maximize the your space advantage, g4, g3, and now a little trick. Okay, white could be clever and play king to h1. G takes h2 is stalemate. G2 would be a goof up, but just king to g4 wins. Followed by taking and then putting the king on f3. Alright, so that means that g takes f5 loses. Okay, another try is king to e2. But now, not fg, but f4. And this time it wins. The point being that e takes f4, king f4. And we just use the e pawn. Likewise, if white were to make some waiting move like king f2, again, it would be the same thing. F takes e3, b4, and king d5, d5 until the white king retreats, and then the king comes in. So, for instance, like this. And now, yeah, we can use the what's called the semi-stalemate method. I'm trying to remember who it is that uses that term. Let me see, where did I get that expression from? I like it. It's actually a nice little phrase. Oh, I think Yusupov uses that term somewhere. So e2 check, king e1, king e3. This is the so-called semi-stalemate method. The king is, of course, stalemated, but bad news for white. He's got something he can move, and it kills him. And we make a queen or a rook, and that's mate. Alright, so king to d2 loses to f5. But remember, white's idea was not to retreat the king, but to leave it there, so that way when black plays f5, he can take and play king d4 and win the game himself. Alright, so what does black do here? If f5, as mentioned, he loses. So he's going to get Zugzwang. If he plays b4, just king to d5, and sooner or later the black king has to give up the e-pawn. And b4 check is no good either because of king to c4. So what's white going to do? Well, he plays king d5. Okay, and that's what happened in the game. But now king to d2, and if king e5, if king e5, just king back to c3 again. So how in the world does black make progress here? So if you haven't figured it out at this point, keep working on it. Well, it's not b4, because if you play b4, then once again the white king can just kind of hang out over towards the king side. King e5, king f2, f5, takes, king g3, and maybe black's even losing now. I'm not 100% sure, but I suspect it is a loss at this point. Certainly, black has no winning chances here. It's just a question of whether he's lost, and I think he is. Okay, so what's the right move then? Well, it's king e6 or king to d6. And maybe by telling you that it's either of those moves will give you the crucial hint. So king c3, and now king e5. So this is the deal. Triangulation. King d2, f5. So the black made sure that white's king was back first, and now on takes, if king c3, white's too late. So here g4, takes, king d4, king f3, and it's a fatal Zugzwang. White loses. Going back here. So after f5, if white tries something like king to d1, again, f4 is the winning approach. King e2, takes, king d5, and white breaks and enters. Alright, so gf, king f5, king e2 is what was played, but after g4, it was time for Rosich to resign, and he did. If h4, then g3, and black picks up the h-pawn and wins. If hg, then king g4, king f2, king h3. So the black king goes around the corner and will sawtooth his way to the pawn. Okay, so that'll work. And finally, going back to here, if king f2, then takes here, and now h2 wins. Whoops, sorry about that. King g4, king g2, and it's almost a draw, but black has a tempo move in reserve. Useful to keep these things handy, and now the black king breaks through. So king f2, king h3, king f1, king g3. You can, again, just zigzag your way there, and now the pawn drops, And as I already noted, when the king is in front of the pawn with the king on the 6th rank, or the 3rd rank, depending on how you want to look at it, black will automatically get the opposition back and promotes. All right, so another very nice win by Rubinstein. This one required a little help in the pawn ending, but it's okay. Sometimes it's it takes causing. You just have to give your opponent some problems and give them a chance to go astray, and they'll often help you. And that's what happened here. All right, so some very nice games. I think good illustrations of some standard techniques, especially demonstrating the importance of having a more advanced king. We saw repeatedly too that small weaknesses in the pawn structure can prove fatal. They seem like they're trivial, but they can in fact be quite significant. And here too, we saw this slight weakness in the pawn structure for white with the doubled pawns, and again, the more active king cost white the game. So when you go into a king and pawn ending, you've got to be really, really sure, if you're the weaker side, that it's a draw. And I mean really sure, because there's no way to get counterplay most of the time. I mean, when you've got pieces, you can counterattack on things, you can get some activity. It's very hard to be active when you're the weaker side in a king and pawn ending. And again, if the other guy's king is further up the board than yours, you're often going to have a lot of trouble. So be really careful. Conversely, if you're the strong side, don't be in any rush to agree to a draw. I mean, don't assume it's a draw and avoid the king and pawn ending or just shake hands. A slightly better king, a slightly better pawn structure is often all you need to win the game. It's really that important. Okay, so I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys went through the work and tried to solve everything for yourself. You do that kind of thing, you put in that kind of effort, and it'll really pay off, both in the long term, but also for really kind of grasping the lesson to the full. The more you invest yourself in these things, the better off you'll be. All right, so I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.